Like so much of the extreme sports segment of video games, snowboarding games have basically ceased to exist as of late. But at their peak, there was one franchise that always towered above the rest: SSX. In much the same way as the Tony Hawk series, SSX dominated any snowboarding related discussion, and while other games like Amped were always trying to take the crown, none really ever did. Also, much like the Tony Hawk series, it seems like SSX has tried just about everything. While there's never been a plastic snowboarding peripheral, the developers of SSX, especially in the franchise's later years, were always trying things to freshen up the game. And with the 2012 reboot of the series, the hot new thing was asynchronous multiplayer. The vast majority of the game is chock full of the stuff: ghosts, high scoreboards, and everything is tied into the online portion of the game. But weirdly enough, the campaign is not, which makes it feel like somewhat of an afterthought. This single-player campaign focuses far too often on the most frustrating parts of the game, forcing you to use weird, out-of-place mechanics like oxygen management and throwing ridiculously difficult courses at you that require a frustrating amount of precision, especially as you approach the game's conclusion. The campaign of SSX is not, however, the main course like it is in most games. It's a fun way to get to grips with the game's control scheme and its often quite wonky terrain, but the real focus of this game is its online portion. Now, usually that's a real killer for old games that have been mostly abandoned, and to be sure, that's partially true for SSX. The weekly competitive events that used to be full of people are basically deserted, though there are still a few people left to compete with. But thankfully, the majority of the game's multiplayer is completely asynchronous, consisting almost entirely of ghost replays that could have been recorded by people on your friends list years before you ever saw them. Of course, that means if they had the chance to become extremely good at the game, you're probably still screwed. The skill gap can be massive, just like in any trick-based game, and without a chance to learn with the rest of the community, you'll likely throw in the towel long before you can match any of your friends that may have picked up the game at launch. Ultimately, the biggest problem is that mechanically, SSX is kind of weak. There's definitely skill to the game, but the ability to become skillful at a game doesn't necessarily mean it's fun to do so. To put it mildly, SSX's controls are rather loose. Like Skate, all of your trick control in the game is on the right stick, which works for Skate because it's grounded. The movements correlate to what's happening with the skateboard on the screen. But SSX is bombastic and over the top. The right stick inputs often make very little sense, and the option to use face buttons feels like a tacked on afterthought. It's still fun to flail around and you'll get a lot of points doing it, but if your goal is to become skillful, it's a somewhat annoying path. Still, take a look at your friends list. See if anyone has a handful of achievements or trophies in SSX. If they do, you're in for a ton of fun competing with them entirely without their knowledge. But if you don't have a friend who played this game once upon a time, or if they played so much of it they became extremely good at it, SSX becomes far more difficult to recommend. The game did come to PlayStation Plus late last year, so that is probably the best place to play it. The place with the greatest chance to find people that maybe played a little bit of the game, got some high scores, but didn't necessarily finish it, and definitely didn't get good at it. Every Friday, I look at a game that was either ignored when it came out, or has been forgotten since. If you like that idea, be sure to subscribe and see the latest videos. If you like this video in particular, be sure to hit that like button, and thanks for watching.